this. We have our hiring fair, and we'll put the link in the chat for you as soon as we're done here. But so George spent just a great guy, lives out in Columbus, Ohio. He spent 4 years in the Marine Corps and 12 years in the Army and infantry. He was a top college wrestler at Ohio State, one of the best programs in the country for wrestling. Went on to compete, try to win a spot at the Olympics in wrestling. So we'll hear all about that. He worked at Ohio State with the wrestling team and helped them with training. And he's just becoming an expert in the sports field on doing a lot of fitness and therapy, and we're gonna get into all that. He also started Veteran Radio Syndicate, so big into podcasting as well. So George, thank you for coming on, man. We appreciate it.
Oh, thank you for having me here. And I was in the Army Reserve, not in the Army full. So just, it wasn't full time, but yeah.
Oh, thanks for correcting. So yeah, tell
Man,
everyone a little bit about you. What talk a little bit about your military experience, what that was like for you, and what you did.
so I went in the Marine Corps because I wanted, the main thing is I went in the Marine Corps because I wanted to wrestle. And that was my goal. I met a guy by the name, we went to the World Cup when I was in high school and saw a guy there by the name of Greg Gibson, who just was an absolute beast. And then when I saw him compete, I was like, yeah, I want to wrestle for the Marines. They had a really good program back then. So the first year I tried out for the Marines, it was my Marine Corps, and I wasn't good enough to make it. Just wasn't big enough. So I deployed on another Westpac and just basically stayed in the gym. Did nothing but lift, uh, trained, lift, run wind sprints, get better. And then in '87, I got on the All Marine team, began my career. So 1988, I represented the Marine Corps at the U.S. Represented the Marine Corps at the U.S. Olympic Trials in Fort Lauderdale, and then that fall, and I started at Ohio State, where I wrestled for Russ Ellickson from '88 to '93. I wrestled for the Army team in '97. I was assistant coach at Ohio State. I ran the club team at, from '97 to '01. I was assistant coach at Ohio State, and from till 2006. During that time, I've helped three UFC fighters get in the Hall of Fame: Kevin Randleman, Mark Coleman, Pat Miletich. Put about another 15 guys in the UFC at one time or another. So uh, I'm a knee Dan in judo. I'm a purple belt in BJJ. So that's sort of my sports background. I trained over a West Side Barbell since '88, and that's part of the other thing that we train on is we Louis Simmons has been, not only as a friend of mine, but he helped me get ready for the Olympic trials in '88 because Marine Corps didn't have a strength coach. So I have lifted and trained over there um, and helped athletes train over there. I power lifted a couple events, and just decided that wasn't my cup of tea because I'd rather throw people. But one of the things that we've helped over the years is with the conjugate method and with recovery, load management, all that, we've helped out uh, athletes. And so my nonprofit, which is On Target for Vets, one of the things that we found out was most veterans get out and they have certain injuries that they aren't addressed, and they have training lifestyles that change. So one of the things we do is we hold health clinics to teach veterans that, hey, and not just veterans, but athletes as well. Okay, this is what you need to do for load management. This is what you need to do for progression. This is what you need to do for injury therapy. So, we work with an orthopedic surgeon. We work with some nutritionists. We also work with, say, hey, you might need to get on protein peptides. Might need to get on BPC 157 because you jumped out of an airplane. You need, your knees are shit. Um, you did, march, with, 100-pound pack. You were in Fallujah as a machine gunner carrying, an M240, things like that. And those, you have what's called repetitive injury syndrome. So some of those injuries, once you rehabilitate, they don't become injury. One of the things we've also seen at the VA has been, this is one of the reasons we started it, they're quick to cut. So sometimes when you go to have surgery, it doesn't necessarily become better. They just want to get you in the system or out of the system, however you want to say it. They operate on you, and your injury doesn't get better. It just, you pushed it down the road. So some of the therapies we do is, you know, for example, one of the things we treat is soldier shoulder, which is something you get from, carrying a weapon, carrying, ammo, carrying, your plate carrier with, 6 magazines or 8 magazines or whatever. That becomes a big problem. So we've used this system with the SEALs. We have one of the SEALs we train is going to break 2 world records in powerlifting in November. He's on slate for that. So, and we talk about recovery. We talk about load management. So that's a little bit about my background.
That's awesome. Talk a little bit about your run at the Olympics and what that was like.
So in '88, we had so in so in '88, I get on the All Marine team, and the number one 88 pound and the number one I was at 220 pounds, and that's my weight class. So you had to go through a qualifier. So I went to the qualifier and then went to the Olympic trials there. So I finished in the top 6. I wasn't good enough to make I wasn't good enough to make the team. I was good enough to get there. I lost to Chris Taroni, who was second, and then Kozlowski won. And me and Kozlowski had some good matches. And a couple times he was a bronze medalist in '88, silver medalist in '92. We've had a couple 2-3 point matches. He was just better. And I say this to the people in '92. I went back. I placed again in the top 6. It's part of the process. And I wrestled Greco, and collegiate. I wrestled, and I wrestled collegiate. Part of it is in doing the process, you become better. Not. I mean, you think about it. We only send 10 wrestlers to the Olympics, and that's one person in your weight class. And there are plenty of people that are really great athletes that never get to compete at the Olympics. But the process makes you better. If competition brings out the best in you. So you go compete, and the journey is, that's part of the journey. I mean, you go to, we go to tournaments, we go to the process. And sometimes you understand that, sometimes that, hey, I might not be the number one guy, or but it's still that part of the process. You do what is best for you. And, I look at, so, and as you get older, and I'll say this, I wrestled 12 gold medalists in my career. And, I've wrestled at, I competed at the World Championships in Sambo. I had a chance to go wrestle in the Moscow Cup. That just makes you better, because when you're struggling, one of the things you go, I wrestled Karelin. Okay. That's something you can draw on. I wrestled, my freshman year at Ohio State, I had 3 Olympians where I wrestled 3 Olympians every day in practice. So when you look at that, as a part of a growing process, you go and say, well, even if I'm having a bad day right now or something like that, if I can endure that, I can, endure getting um, a report to one of my clients. That's not going to compare. So, and that's, part of that is the growing process. I studied judo at the Kodokan in Japan, and that was, that is one of the things that, you look at, you know, is sometimes you're not going to be the best, but you're going to be the best version of you. And that's, part of the things that, that sports brings out, and even, there's plenty of people in the, you could take a look at, baseball or football or, a lot of great athletes never won a Super Bowl or, Dan Marino's probably the greatest, you know, NFL quarterback, never won a Super Bowl. So you just, you know,
Part of the game. That's good. David Noriega, you got a question for George?
Absolutely. Hey, what's going on, George?
hey, not much, man. How you
I,
doing?
I wish I had your history of like what you've been able to see because there's a couple names that I want to Louis Simmons, West Side Barbell versus the
Yeah,
World. If you haven't watched that documentary, I've had my coach. I just started powerlifting, did my first tournament at 39 years old, about to retire. It wasn't until I
who's your
met
coach?
Jonathan Erskine.
Okay,
He he's an amateur himself, so he competes as well. But he's our strength and conditioning coach down at SOC South, Special Operations Command South. And I'll tell you what, I tell people this is the same as like powerlifting is one of those things like it's you against that weight, and guess
yep.
what? It'll change. Yeah, yeah. Richard Crowder. Yeah, no, he's down at SOC South now. He's a good friend of mine. But anyways, I want to say like reemphasize kind of what he's saying is like challenge yourself physically, obviously, and mentally. But I will tell you, lifting weights is both physical and mental. If you don't think you could do something, and when you see that heavy weight on the bar, you have to mentally tell yourself you're going to do it, and then obviously you got to physically do it.
Do you
It's
have
the best of both worlds.
his book of methods?
No, he did send it to me. John, my
Yeah,
coach, he sent me
yeah.
the book, and yeah, I want everybody
So
to watch it.
one of the things that there's by the way, in West Side versus the World, I think there's a clip of me and Chuck in it, in the one of the frames. So I do jujitsu with Chuck Vogelpool.
Oh man.
So and Chuck has been a good friend of mine since '88, and he's just a beast. But one of the things that I tell people when we train, the two most important things is load management and progression. And so one of the there for example, there's the Romanian system of lifting. You can't do that. I mean, you don't have you don't have the steroids. Number two, you don't have the system, and but it's load management. It works the same in lifting as it does in real life. You've got to be able to understand how many jobs you can do. People get burned out at work because they take on 6 or 8 different projects, and you can't bear that. And I say this to I don't know how many people are listening, but there's something we talk about, and one of the reasons we talk about load management and healing vets is your central nervous system can only operate at 90% for 21 days straight, and then you start having central nervous shutdown. This is why when you're on deployment, that you have to take time off. And one of the guys we trio that is on our team is that we deal with as a Navy SEAL, Tom Richardson. And we've Scott Daly, Tony DeCenzo. Those are some of the SEALs we've trained. We tell them about that. We say, hey, listen, you can't train at at past 90. You have a central nervous system shutdown. It's the same thing at work. You start overloading at work, you're going to start missing simple steps. They took a in Japan, they took a survey, and they saw that 90% or 80 to 90% of all injuries came at the last hour of work. And Dunning, who's the or Deming was the one about productivity. He looked at that and he says, and people by the end of the day get tired, so you only have a 6 hour max where you can actually work. By then you start having what's called energy degradation. So you have to do the same thing in work. You have to do the same thing in the military. You have to shut down. So that is one of the things that I've seen in young powerlifters. And it's the same thing. I'll give you an example. For the people that are, for the, and Sheila, I'm going to respond to this in a second. But for the people that do, jujitsu, one of the things that schools do is Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Well, you overload those days, and then you can't what we call overmat. So it's easy. The way we did it was you trained every day, shorter periods, but you trained every day. If you needed to ramp up, you could. If you needed to go, if somebody wanted to go full go, yeah, because you're doing that every day, but you're not doing 5, 6 matches 3 days a week, where you do 4 matches 4 or 5 days a week. The consistency is different. So one of the things that we did at Ohio State was that we took one day. We took one day a week where we kind of went light. So we'd go Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday hard. Thursday would be light. Then Friday would be kind of back to normal, and that helped. I mean, that one day kind of. So, and the other thing for lifting, we talk about training today. You're not going to have to run. You're not going to have to go to Ranger School again. I mean, hopefully all of us have never had to. We're not going to go back to deployment. You're not going to have to run with an M240 to get to a rally point. You're not going to have to, take an M4 with 8 mags. So one of the things that we talk about is consistency, and is you're better off doing, not periodization, but basically maintenance. And that's one of the things that we talk about. Load management is not just about performing at a top level; it's also performing daily. Because you beat yourself up today, and when you're 60 or 65, you're going to have to walk with a cane, and eventually, things break. And
It'll be Ronnie Coleman.
Yeah,
There's so many parallels that you're explaining that I think you're capturing them as you're saying. It's like work. There's so many parallels to what he's saying that applies to everyday life. When you're talking about load management, whether it's volume or just heavy weight, there's certain things that you'll do at the gym if you want to get stronger, right? But you're not going to do those all the time. It's just not going to happen. You can't perform at that level. So to that, for the veterans that are listening to that, is like, think about it in your everyday life. You cannot overload thinking, I'm always thinking about transitioning and this and that, because you're not going to be as effective when you really need to be. Right. You can send as many emails out or as many connections out and as many whatever. But at the end of the day, you're looking for that one moment sitting in front of that person that wants to hire you. And that's when you really want to perform. But if you just overstimulate that part of your brain, that part of your existence, you'll kind of burn out. And I've seen that even my young career as a power lifter. But yeah, there's so
I'll
many
say another thing that one of the basics we've done, whether it's UFC, whether it's grappling, whether it's on powerlifting and on coaching, I sit down with athletes, and we do what's called a predictive analysis. So one of the things that we have to say is, what do you want the outcome to be? Now, I'll give you an example. In 2011, I also, I have a business background too. I took my company from the day we incorporated to publicly owned in 18 months. And one of the things that we talk about is, when you're planning your business career as well as your, you have to do a predictive analysis. And what we mean by that is saying, okay, listen, if I have to make, you know, if I'm in sales, how many calls do I have to make in order to, to get so many meetings? How many contacts am I going to have to send out? How many um, sales calls? What's the vertical marketing for the product that I have to sell? So in doing those, there's no difference between setting up your business acumen than getting ready for a tournament. For getting, you're going to have to do the same thing. What work am I going to have to do? How many, what projects am I going to be able to put out? How many proposals can I put out? You're not going to be able, and one of the things that I have seen is people get burned out or get frustrated in business because they're overloading. They are trying to do way too much because they think that activity means accomplishments.
Or productivity too. They think that
Yeah,
just because they're doing something that they're making forward movement, and reality is they're not, because they're
and
over.
so and then we use some of the same thing. And then the other thing is also to keep in mind that when one of the things that's not being said in that I've seen, and again, the veteran community is a wide funnel. But one of the things that we haven't seen, and one of the reasons we started a nonprofit to help, is people don't talk about how to heal. So, if you have scar tissue, getting on BPC 157 and TB 500 will heal some of that. Um, if you are, one of the things that I've seen with vets is they have a lack of sleep, because they also have a lack of testosterone. So we say, hey, maybe TRT is the answer for you. One of the things we've seen with paratroopers, with guys from the 82nd, 101st, and we've got some SF guys. They have a lot of L3, L4, L5 lumbar injuries, and C3, C4, and C5s. And we say, well, maybe you're better off getting some surgery to fuse them, or here's some other things you can do. Here's some exercises you can do to strengthen them, or at least take the pressure off. If you have nerve damage, there are some therapies to do that, because you're going to get, you're going to get neuropathy. And we're at Ohio State, we have an FDA license. At Ohio State, we're studying psilocybin, to help, TBI, and to help that. So before COVID shut our lab down, I was working on my master's in applied compounds and mitochondrial repair. But we were saying that some compounds will heal. And one of the things I recommend to all veterans, regardless of what they do, go take the MCI. It's called the Montreal Cognitive Impairment Test, and keep up with it and see how you're doing. Because one of the things that rises up in veterans, especially with PTSD, or you don't necessarily have to have PTSD, but one of the things we've seen is non-combat veterans commit suicide at a higher rate than combat vets. So whatever is there, you have to kind of adjust for it. So if you start to see a decline in your cognitive impairment, address that, because that is, if you start, injuries lead to cognitive disrepair. It's called the MCI, the Montreal Cognitive Impairment Test. And it shows you where you're at. And one of the other thing is to check cortisol levels. And so I was a grunt. I didn't, I spent my life, when I was in the reserves, and I was 11 Bravo. I was a 31 Bravo for, which was an MP, and in the Marine Corps, I was a machine gunner. You can't live your life on nicotine, hate, cat rippets, caffeine. I mean, and you can't. So that's another thing that you have to address as well. So when you nicotine up, um, when you have too much nicotine, too much caffeine, too many energy drinks, that affects your cortisol level, which then affects everything else.
Oh yeah. No, there's so much information you had in there, and I want to get to some of these other questions, and then I'll come back to what you were saying for some of the injuries and like some of those like small things you can do that the doctor's not going to tell you. And
Right.
I did that, and I'll tell you that because the only reason I will come back to that is because I had that same thing where they're like, your back's this, MRI, this, that. Working with my strength and conditioning coach and his team, it's almost like I still have the injuries below, but my muscles around it are making it easier for me to move to where I don't have lower
Right.
back. But we'll get back to that. Jesse, go ahead, man.
Oh, hey, thank you. Thank you, sir, for being here and speaking to us. Just listening about your life, man. Do you have a book?
Yeah, I have a book that came out. It's called The Book of Men, and it came out. I'm gonna tell you guys one funny story about Louis Simmons. So if you haven't, Louis is the same in the real world. So I go to my first ever powerlifting meet, right? And my goal is to pull 705. That is why I wanted to go there. I so I got 705. I accomplished that. But we go to bench, and we had tried these shirts made by Inzer, and it was it was the one ply. And I get on the bench, and I only had like 6 weeks of training into this shirt, and I get underneath the weight, and I got 415 on the bar, and I get it up, and it slowly is coming up, and my technique is shit, but I get the three lights on it. One of the guy, my bench technique was so bad that one of the guys asked Louis, "Hey, is that guy special needs?" And Louis just looks at me, he goes, "No, he's a wrestler." And but some of the shit that he would say, he's like, "Man, you need a spotter on your volume." The things that he, like, don't have $100 pair of shoes and a 10-cent squat. He was like that in real life. And, but the one thing he always addressed is that you have to train smart and don't take risks, because there's nothing in the conjugate system, or any training system, if you take risks, you're going to get hurt. If you go on, if you're, if you go to a PR and you've never hit, let's say 500 on a bench, and you go to 515, you have a chance of getting hurt. So you have to train up to that level. And part of it is that it's the same thing with in healing. You have to train you have to maintain, but you're going to have to maintain with injuries. And, some injuries are never going to go away. So so anyway, that's a part. What was your question
So the
that you
book is
wanted?
called no. So my real question was, what are your thoughts on CrossFit?
I think it's the equivalent to headquarters platoon. They're a bunch of fucking mouth breathers. I'm sorry. I mean
Jesse, I'll tell you, that's a good question, and I'm glad. I don't mind. I will tell you, like, that question is great too, because I want to hear George's perspective, because I know a lot of powerlifters and they have their perspective on different. They don't. It's not like it's good that people are trying to get in shape, but it's the method and how you get stronger. If that's what you really want to do, that's what you should, right? That's what you're looking for. So, George, I'm really curious about that question too.
so
Yeah.
I
No, thank you. Yeah. Go
we
ahead.
I
Go
have
on,
a
please.
I have a theory about CrossFit. I think it was started by orthopedic surgeons because they didn't have enough clients, so they wanted new injuries that they hadn't seen before. They wanted to get some new clients. Because I mean, the last time I checked, you're getting a medal, you're getting a prize, you're spending $100 entry fee to get a prize for who can work out the best. I mean, that's but I think CrossFit has taken the place of aerobics or Zumba. It just it it is
Zumba.
just it's folly, because a lot of these, the people that do some of this stuff, they think they're accomplishing it. But if you take a look at GPP and SPP, guys in CrossFit don't have it.
Mm.
I who's this? Cedric Williams. I've just seen too many injuries in CrossFit. And here's the thing: you don't have to have people open up a CrossFit gym, and they don't have to have any certifications. They basically, they publish the workout of the day, and doing certain exercises together are counterproductive. And so, I'll give you an example. When we were doing at Ohio State, when you're doing sprints and quick muscle things, you don't add volume to that, because then you're defeating the purpose. So that is, that's part of the problem behind it. Number two is you get put in certain, you're lifting in certain positions that are inherent. The risk is inherent. If you're doing power cleans or you're doing clean and jerks, that's an inherent, dangerous exercise. And the risk on return, um, um, the return on investment or the return on work, whatever you call it, just isn't there.
Yeah.
You're better.
All right. Thank you.
I mean, you're better off going to, and here's the other thing is, if you are having, if you're doing CrossFit, it's also, you're not doing anything that's, you're trying to do GPP, but you're not doing those things that other people. Okay, that's enough about CrossFit. Out of curiosity,
Thank you.
Python developing, is that where your company is?
No, sir. I'm trying to become a software developer, but Python is the computer language that I'm using.
Okay, that makes sense.
Now, thanks for the question,
sir.
Jesse. And just for
Thank
everybody
you.
out there,
I'm sorry for the controversy.
no,
Yeah.
if you're looking at CrossFit and great, whatever gets you off the couch to go do something, just be very careful with the coaches and what they're doing. It's just like in anything. But the higher level CrossFitters, most of them are Olympic lifters or power lifters, and they do CrossFit to, stimulate what they've learned.
Or they do it because they get it. The
Yeah.
guys that are doing it, they get invitation fees. And by the way, if any of you are ever in Columbus, Ohio, and you want to go over to West Side and get a workout, just get a hold of me. I mean,
I'll reach out to you.
Yeah, I'll give you a shirt if you come up. I'll give you a shirt.
Nice. Arnold, go ahead.
Okay, I don't even know where to start. Okay, so I am very, very much interested in strength and conditioning. So coming from my background is I spent the last 4 years as an explosive ordnance disposal instructor, and I'm getting my degree in tactical strength and conditioning. And over the past 4 years, I was pretty much like the head PTL. So I pretty much revamped our training program. I implemented a screening process for it's basically an overhead squat with a dowel, so we can see biomechanics and movement. I was also the GPC card holder, so I put in a good word for us to get an in-body system, so we can actually start tracking body composition for our students, while at the beginning of their training iteration and at the very end of our course, so we can actually track progress with both of those assessments. This is very, very much what I want to do. I've read multiple books from Dr. Aaron Horscheg. I have a signed book from Starting Strength. His name is escaping me right now. Starting Strength. Oh my gosh, I can't. He's based out of Wichita Falls. Mark Ripito, thank you. I have a signed book from Mark Ripito. What additional where do I go? Where do I go? I'm
I'll,
very much interested in this.
I'll tell you the first thing you do if this is what you want to do. Number one, read. But number two, and write down what you're doing. And what I mean by that, keep a journal. When you're in the gym, there's a lot of information out there. Go get the West Side Book of Methods. That is one that I would recommend if you haven't gotten that already. Go get the Soviet Strength and Conditioning Bible. That's another one that really works. There's 3 or 4 different publishers about that. But write down the stuff that you're doing and then keep track of it. Because some of the stuff that you're going to learn doesn't work. Absolutely doesn't work. But some of the stuff that does work, you want to know why it's working. And I'll give you an example. Has anybody, obviously the 5-4-3-2-1 method has been published in numerous journals, and it's one of the worst exercises ever. Does not work. Does not increase strength. Actually degrades movement and capability. But people still go to the gym, and you see, the gym bunnies doing 5-4-3-2-1. Why? Because people don't know any better. So part of one of the things that you don't max and volume the same day. And I've seen people do that, and I'm like, so Heidi, I hope Heidi St. Charles did. Okay. So people would do 5 reps, 4 reps, 3 reps, 2 reps, 1 rep.
At very high intensity.
Yeah, that does not work at all. It is counterintuitive. I mean, some of the stuff you have to do is counterintuitive. Part of it is that we've learned as we've gone across. Now, I'll give you another prime example. Mike Mentzer trained Dorian Yates, and he won the Olympia. Mike Mentzer was not one. He was like, hey, high carbs win. He got Tom Platz on a high carb diet. It won. When we were training at Ohio State, and for even I'll give you a prime example. We use a version of the zone diet. We use a version of what is called the zone diet. At that level, we were training at probably about 60% carbs, 25% protein, 15% fat. And that is a diet for people that are, in combat sports that works. Now, could you do that in every sport? No, but that's one that works there. If you're going to do this, to say, one of the things, again, what I was talking to Arnold is that talk about predictive analysis. So one of the things we do with a predictive analysis, we had tests that we would give our wrestlers or the guys to say, okay, Matthew, what the diet that most of them are doing is called the Mike Dulce diet, and it's about 30, 30, 30. It's a little bit higher on carbs, but it's hard to train keto and do an MMA fight. Very few people are going to be doing it. But you take a look at Mike O'Hearn, and some guys looking good and being able to perform are two different things. So going to what we were saying about certain systems is that you have to make sure that they work and try them, the predictive analysis. You might need to ramp up in some jobs. I don't have anything. I don't know much about EOD other than the fact that if it goes boom, you're all dead and your mom and dad get a $200,000.
Try to make it not go boom.
Yeah. Well, and then you get a $200,000 check for that. So but one of the things that happens is that if you are doing a predictive analysis, you might need volume. You might need more volume than strength. And so I I'm going to say something that I don't know if you guys are familiar with this or not. So we wrote, there's a bunch of our coaches, and we did a predictive analysis for the SF school. Now, this was 20 some years ago, but they've kind of used it. And we have I think we have 6 operators from SF and CAG that we've trained. One of them is a guy by the name of Todd Van Langen. He has a shot for Beretta, and he had his 3,600 yard shot, but we trained him physically. So the ideal subject for SF is 5'11", 5'10", 5'11", 183 pounds. If you add size to that, you give up volume. If you decrease, if you decrease the size, you give up strength. So and that's why you rarely see guys making it through Q course, Ranger school that are huge, because it needs, you need volume. And on the other hand, there's some jobs that actually you need Rottweilers. If you're going to carry a machine gun, you're not going to put the 145-pound sergeant on it, and
For sure.
and so those are predictive analysis. And as you add size, you lose the ability for explosiveness and for
Endurance.
If you add endurance, you're going to lose strength. So somewhere in the middle, you have what's called, the performance axis, and that's the one that you focus on for that, that sport. Or, what, then it just have to be the sport. It could be, for a job. If I want a Navy SEAL, I want somebody that's 5'10", 185 pounds, because I know that they're going to be able to both have volume and strength without giving one up or the other.
Yeah, you got to stay kinetic.
Yeah, you haven't seen, you've never seen a 200-pound man win a marathon, and you've never seen a 132-pound guy win the 100 meters. So it's, you take a look at Usain Bolt. Usain Bolt looks like a wide receiver in the NFL. So because you need volume. Not volume. You need explosiveness, and that comes with, muscle.
Yeah.
So
thanks for the question, Arnold. And yet the feedback on everything, like when you sum this all up, like with the veterans and like what we're doing is it's so important to stay physically active and do it with some knowledge behind it, right? And if you don't have the knowledge, either do it yourself, doing your own research, like he said, write it down, practice it, or find someone that can put you through the motions without hurting yourself, right? And when I say like someone that's reputable, I have my person, but I just happened to meet him because he was our strength and conditioning coach for the command, and now I hired him to be my personal strength and conditioning coach.
May I ask, David? This is to you.
Yes.
Who are you? Who did you serve with?
I'm in the Air Force, but I was at Special Operations Command South at my last assignment, and that's when I met my coach, Jonathan Erskine. So one of the big things that I want to highlight what you said is that there's a lot of misconceptions of lifting weights and I'm going to get big and this and that. What sport do you want to play? If you want to be a better runner, you still got to do some strength and conditioning to be a better runner. But I'm not saying you're going to be deadlifting 500 pounds and squatting 500. What I'm saying is that you can do, the right person can coach you to get stronger and still get better at your sport, right? It's going to be one of those things, but you still have to practice your sport. A lot of people think just because they're getting stronger, I'm just going to be better.
Right.
Like, no, you still got to practice the sport you want to play, whether it's running, hiking, mountain biking, whatever it is. But strength and condition is the core of it.
Keep in mind also too, as veterans, we have, and it doesn't matter how long you served, and because you've been in there. One of the things you have to address is inflammation. So we have a tendency as veteran, and I'm just saying this as, athletes and stuff like this, but as veterans as well, there's a lot of inflammation out there. If you don't address that when you're training, you're going to have problems that are associated with it. For example, if you're a runner, one of the people just wondered about their knees. If you have problems with your knees, some of that is cartilage repair. You might need to get on, chondroitin. You might need to get on magnesium for your joints. There are things that you can do. You might need to get on some BPC. You might need to, to get, some of the, oil, like flaxseed oil helps lubrication, stuff like that. And also, I'll give you a prime example. I wrote when I was at Ohio State. I wrote for the Barry Bonds case, and one of the things I did some white papers at Ohio State. I talked about absorption levels. So with absorption levels, you might, if you're on nitrates, if your system has too much nitrates, you don't absorb as much testosterone. I don't know if you've ever heard that. So there's a couple NIH studies and some. So if your system is high on nitrates, you're going to have a lower testosterone level. You have to adjust for that. If one of the things that we carry left over from the military, and it takes you some time is we have horrible diets because you're always eating on the run. You're just like, and you're substituting like, hey, I'm going to have a bar and a Rip It and a Monster. And, instead of, let me have some, lean chicken, or, some rice. Yeah. Sorry, my dogs we bought a puppy, which is kind of, and so, hey, but I'm going to tell you something about this, Amber. You have sushi in the car, right? What's the first thing people do is they dip it in soy sauce, which is added salt, and now you took they get a Cobb salad, which is relatively, I'll bring him up. His name is Pete, but you get a Cobb salad and you add like, a cup of ranch to it. Now you're beating, your I don't know, whatever you want to call it, you're defeating the purpose. So everybody is kind of, having different responses to it. And again, it goes back to that. You have training and work and life balance is like a wagon wheel. You got to have work. You have to have, one of the things, and I'm going to say this, and I've called him out a couple times because there's a guy by the name of Jocko Wilnick, and he comes out and he's wanted to train a West Side. And I'm like, I've told, the people I'm like, no, because he's just, claim jumping. But he has these workouts at 4:30 in the morning or 4 o'clock in the morning. I'm like, I trained at Ohio State in '92. I qualified for the Olympic trials. We didn't train at 4:30 in the morning because when are you going to go to sleep? If you're training optimum, you got to get 8 hours of sleep. So that means at 4:30 in the morning, you went to bed at 8:30 in the morning. At night, you came home, you kissed your wife, and you went to bed. I mean, if you work, you're up at 4:30 in the morning, you're training. So that's a promotional gimmick. We're at West Side when we were training, is like we would go to breakfast at 6 a.m., go with Louis, we'd go over to Bob Evans, and we'd have breakfast, then we would go lift. And 6:30 we go lift and get on the bar by because that's another thing. One of the things we've learned in wrestling and MMA and in powerlifting, you can't train on an empty stomach. You're not going to perform well. So those are some of the little minor things that people do, is that they wind up not thinking about this. So performance is a whole. It's a like a whole puzzle. I mean, it's like I said, a wagon wheel. You've got to work on all factors.
Yeah. And I think it highlights really quick. And I highly encourage everybody, be physical, whatever it is, whatever sport you're in, whatever competition you like to do. And the reason I say that is because you'll slowly get into something and you'll make some gains, but you'll start noticing, like he said, the wagon wheel kind of method is that you'll start noticing like, wow, I kind of plateaued. What's wrong? Well, it's because you're not hydrating enough, or you're not eating before you come, and you're not sleeping enough because you got to let all of it starts to come into play, and it makes you more serious with your sport. So for me, when I'm in training, it's like I have to go to sleep. I have to get rest. And when I wake up, I got to eat something. I got to start drinking something right away because I'm about to go tax my body in the gym. And then I know later on in the day, I go, I need to relax. I need to chill. It goes back
So,
and forth
so
it
here's
keeps me
a,
in line, for example, is what I want to say.
here's the thing we used to do at Ohio. We did at Ohio State. We've done it with the guys in UFC. And I'll give you a prime example. We did this with a guy named Wes Sims that I don't know if you ever, I don't know if you've ever seen. He fought Frank Mir, and but we did this with Pat Miletich. Um, Check your resting heart rate first thing in the morning when you wake up. Get a baseline. So if your resting heart rate is say 52, check it in the morning. As soon as you get up out of bed, if it's elevated, that means your body is tired and pumping more blood, and then you might need to back off your training for that day. And that's something to keep in mind. One of your guys asked about what's the best cardio. Best cardio I've seen for MMA, pulling sleds and stairs. That's the best cardio. Now you can do long distance, do running, but cardio, because MMA is going to be, you're going to fight in spurts. You're not going full bore. So replicate that in training. 40 to 50-yard sled pulls at at not max effort, but at and then the stairs, running stadium stairs, those seem to be the most effective. And then after that is sprints.
No, man, I agree with everything you're saying. It's like I'm at church, but
Real,
Yeah.
like,
so I
straight
wanted
up.
to. I know we're getting into the 3 o'clock. We got a live hiring event here at 3. Heidi, we're gonna take your question and then we'll leave it at that. But go ahead, Heidi.
Hey, thank you for all the information. This has been great. What advice would you have for somebody who's either new at getting into like weightlifting, or in my case, just fell off the wagon and haven't done it in a while, and now I feel like my routine doesn't necessarily support what I'm trying to do?
What I would do, just to go get a trainer for a couple of sessions. Go in the gym, lift light. Don't
Chase
you
a
know
pump.
you don't want to just start out and doing, you're trying to chase, you're not trying to compete, but um get a trainer. What I would do is probably 6 to 7 sets a session. The first thing I would do, the first session I would go in, I'd only probably do 3 or 4 sets, not a full workout. Do that for the first 4 to 6 weeks. Just get your body used to being in the gym, nothing heavy, lit 50%, high reps, 10 to 12 reps, and then start on that. Get the and the basics is you want to do, it's like, I'm a little teapot, short and stout, shoulder to, so you want to do shoulders, chest, legs and back. So basically one day just do some squats and a couple of leg curls, leg extensions. Next day do some lat pull downs with some curls, chest and some tricep, but no more than 3 or 4 reps. Get your body used to that, and then after, do that for 6 weeks, then take a look and where you want to go next. Because if you go in there, here's one of the things that we've learned too. If you go in there the first day and you're sore, day number 2, because your trainer's a putz, but number 2, you're not going to come back. So
Yeah.
anyway,
Yeah, don't be scared to get out there. And sometimes it's like it's you against you. I mean, literally.
Yeah.
when you're lifting weights, don't compare yourself to like, oh, this person's lifting this already, this weight class. It's you against you. And
Give
you know,
yourself grace.
it's a process. You are not going to be strong overnight. You're not going to be at your goal overnight. And yes, but if you're invested in it, you're invested in yourself, and that's the best thing you can be. So,
By the way, I'm going to try to do this real quick. This is my puppy. This is
Ah!
the puppy. This is Pete. So he's an Australian Shepherd.
It's a beautiful
And-
dog.
Yeah, thank you. So but we've got, 2 pits. But if you guys have, Jordy's got my contact info, and David, you can,
yeah,
reach
no,
out.
I'm going to reach out to you because I'll be in Ohio in about a month.
You're welcome to. She doesn't have to hide. Is that your daughter? Oh, she's trying to hide. That's so cute. Reach out to me if you have any questions about, training and stuff like that. But if you're in Ohio, I'll meet you over at Westside. You can tour the facility, get a couple reps in, and get. So it was a pleasure to be on here. Thank you guys for having me. You guys, good luck on everything. We'll talk another time.
George, appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thanks for everything.
Thank you. And
Thank you so
Arnold,
much.
hey, Arnold, Jordy's got my contact info.